I started by taking in the sides of the dress with pins to create my desired fit. Then I took off the dress and evened out the pins to create a straighter line. Using a seam ripper, I'm going to detach the biased edge finish. I only need to remove about 1 centimeter or 2 past where my pins are placed. Now I'm ready to trim away the extra fabric, leaving about 1 centimeter outside of, again, where my pins are placed. I'm also trimming away the top of the fabric so that the front and the back piece line up. Because we're sewing silk, it's important to use a fine needle. Now using our seam ripper again, we're going to unstitch the French seam and trim away any extra fabric. Now you can repin the 2 pieces of fabric together. And because they were in a French seam, you might need to iron them out a bit before you sew them back together. And now, as close to the edge as you can, sew together with a straight stitch. Trim away the extra fabric to make it easier for the next step of the French seam. Now we're going to fold over the fabric, tucking away the seam that we just created, and iron it down. For a more detailed example of the French seam, I've linked a video below in the description. And now we're going to sew the second stitch of our French seam. If your dress doesn't have a French seam, you would just use a regular stitch for the side seams. Now we're ready to reattach our bias strip. By pinning the bias strip down back onto the fabric, we can then see how much we need to trim away. So using a measuring tape, we're going to measure out 1 centimeter and then cut away the excess. After having cut away the excess, we're going to reattach the 2 pieces. So start by pinning them together, ironing them out, sewing them together with your 1 centimeter seam allowance, and trimming away the excess. Your bias strip should now fit perfectly onto your garment, so you can just fold it over and start pinning it down onto the fabric, making sure to tuck all your raw edges into the bias strip. When everything's all pinned down, you're ready to sew, making sure you're sewing through all your layers of fabric, including the bias tape and the dress itself. Then do the exact same steps to the other side, and you're all done.